I'm going to press record, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, excellent, Jeremy. Thank you and welcome. Happy, if you're in Chicago, gray Thursday afternoon. A couple inclusion best practices. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And for a visual description, for those of you who may not have access to the video recording and is a disability inclusion best practice, I am a white male, gray goatee, thinning gray hair with glasses in a bright blue pullover 3/4 zip that says disability in on it. Another one of our supporting memberships that we support at inQuest. So it's great to be with you here today. Jeremy, thank you for the introduction on a topic that we feel so strongly about at inQuest, and that's epic allyship. That's a term we're using in the firm with our clients that kind of ramps up the notion of being an ally to another level. And I'll talk about how we define this in just a moment. So welcome to all of you and what sounds like a great and productive day. Jeremy already covered a bit about me, so I'm going to skip this slide. But we are excited, and I am going to share that next week we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary at inQuest. That's a milestone that we are incredibly excited about. We have been a certified diverse supplier since day one through the NGLCC and our support of the chamber as well. So Jeremy, thank you for that ongoing partnership. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is our day job. We work in strategy, training, and what you see in that third bucket, bridges and breakthroughs, when things are messy and the going gets tough, but coming together is crucial. That's the work we do in this space. Our leadership team, we are so richly proud of. Many of members of the leadership team have been speakers at chamber events that we are so excited about supporting. So just a few reminders of our team. We have programs running globally. The pandemic, we were global well before the pandemic, but that has also increased our ability to reach outside of the US in this important work. Some of our clients are listed here. These are a few of our current client partners. Some of these brands you know likely very well in this space. So pleased to be here, but one thing I know for certain, having been in the DEI space for 25 years, that the landscape today is like none other that we have seen in the last quarter of a century. And you see some of those images on the screen, which are obvious factors for why things are different. But I really believe that the speed of change on this topic is leading an important need in our workplaces to be better allies for and with one another. With an increasing culture of divisiveness and camps that have formed, and the workplace being one of those places, even virtually, where we increase the likelihood of us intersecting across lines of difference. It's one of the places, the richest places we have to get exposure and be proximate to individuals and people and colleagues who are different from us. That the notion of allyship is now more important than perhaps ever before. And so I'm pleased and honored to be able to be here today with you and give you a few tips and highlights where this is from a larger program that we offer at inQuest called Epic Allyship. I'm giving you some of the sound bites and highlights of it today. But I'm going to start with a very short video teaser reel that kind of highlights, if you will, the need from an employee perspective on why this topic is so important. So I'm going to play this video. It's all of about 30 seconds.
Oh, you don't look gay.
I mean, did you hear that? Well, before they even hear me talk, expect that I don't speak English that well.
Oh, you're cute to be fat. I've been told that. Oh, well, you know, you millennials are always on the phone.
Well, I think you can't hear because you're in a wheelchair.
It's always, oh, well, you did that pretty well for a female. So you need to stop and listen. I just want to be able to talk about issues that come up and then move past them.
So that video was put together from one of our colleagues in the firm, Dr. Michael Barron, and I'll show you a book that he just released here in just a moment called Subtle Acts of Exclusion, where he and his research partner, Dr. Tiffany Jana, went out and video captured employees going to and from their workplace and asked them simply, have you ever had an experience at work that made you feel less than? That leads us, every employee that they asked that question of had something to say and respond to. And so that leads us to the need of what do we do with that when we see or hear these things happening at work? How do we become epic allies to one another? So we're going to take today's session and explore and practice how to be an epic ally. And those are really from two avenues. When something is said or done that appears to have crossed a line, whether it's an overt or subtle act of exclusion, think about that as something that we're reacting to. When something's said or done and we need to react as an epic ally, or the proactive, when you're looking to help build and invest in a relationship and success of others in absence of perhaps a negative event or trigger. So those are the ways that we're going to talk about epic allyship in today's program. And I will just share this as my disclaimer. All of us come to this work and this topic of epic allyship with our own filters, our own lens, our own backgrounds and experiences, how we view the world. What you're going to hear today is mine as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner for the last 25 years and doing this work. What I will tell you, though, is the model that we're going to walk through, the four-step model of epic allyship, is one that I use. It's not just a consulting model at inQuest. It's actually one that we practice. We practice with one another in the firm because we don't always get it right with one another, even though this is our day job. And so, keep that in mind as we go throughout today's this afternoon session around filters. I'm not expecting my experience to match or be identical to anyone else's, but I am here today to share what that experience is from my point of view with you today. What I'd love to do is, if you would, this is the interactive portion of the program. There's a couple of these. If you would open the chat box, and would love to just quickly hear from you in chat. What are some of the reasons that you sometimes find it difficult to know when or how to be an ally to a coworker? What makes this hard? Before we even go into definitions of allyship, what sometimes makes it hard to know when or how to be an ally? Fernando, thank you. I want to be careful not to overstep boundaries. Where am I supposed to jump in? I don't know what to say, Jeremy, right? So I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to make it worse. Amy, I'm not sure what to say that is helpful. What else? What sometimes makes it difficult to know how or when to be an ally to a coworker? Sometimes makes it difficult. Lisa, I'm just seeing yours now. My screen wasn't up far enough. Love this and very insightful. Navigating the line between allyship and white saviorism. And you can replace white with sometimes just even male saviorism. There's a variety of ableism, saviorism there that can go in there as well from a disability perspective. When am I an ally? And when am I taking in kind of on my savior horse, if you will, which may not be as helpful? Not having an awareness of the issue. I may not even know I need to be an ally in the moment. Thank you, Amy, for that. Yeah, I don't want to speak on somebody's behalf if they may not welcome it. And what do I do if I don't have or haven't invested in the relationship, James, as you're stating here? So these are all very real reasons. I want to acknowledge this is not easy. Our workplace relationships, the context, that we have for any situation is complex and often nuanced. So I want to be clear, I'm not going to give you easy answers, or if you only do these 4 things, you will be successful every time. But what I do hope is that this will give you a framework to increase your likelihood of success. So thank you for sharing those reasons why it's sometimes difficult. Here's how we define ally or allyship. We rely on the great work of author Roxane Gay, and we draw on and adapt her definition of allyship. And it's what you see here on the screen. It's somebody who takes action. So it is an action-oriented approach to stand with or for others, especially those with marginalized identities, when dignity, inclusion, respect, equity, and or equality are not being realized or experienced. So it's when we're reacting to. And what that means for Roxane Gay and her definition is I need to kind of take the struggle on as my own. I need to wrestle with this a bit in a way that's appropriate. I need to stand up even when I may feel uncertain or uncomfortable. And if I am in a position of privilege, how do I transfer those benefits of my privilege to those who lack it? Talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And how do I love this last one, how do I not make it about me when I'm trying to be an ally for someone else? So I think those are really helpful frames of what it means and the depth and importance to be an ally for someone. And you'll notice that this is a reactive stance. So it's partly why at inQuest we've adopted epic ally as a broader term, if you will. It includes everything on the ally slide just before, the reactive and the proactive. So how am I an epic ally to someone when they may need when I'm promoting, mentoring, sponsoring, or advocating for those individuals or groups, especially those with marginalized identities, even in the absence of any overtly or blatantly negative circumstance? So think about this as the proactive. In this way, epic allies work to address systemic and institutionalized inequities, even when we're not able to overtly name them. We believe at inQuest this is one of the next frontiers of DEI work, is leaning into systems of inequity, institutionalized structures of inequity. And one of the greatest levers we're going to have to address that is one another, looking at and asking questions to be epic allies for and with others. So we're going to see if we can put this into practice a bit more. I'm going to ask this question before we go any further. You see it? And if you would in chat, please. Think of a time when someone was an ally or an epic ally to you at work, and they did it well. So they were an ally or an epic ally, so reactive or proactive to you at work. How did their actions make you feel? What was the impact of their being an ally or an epic ally to you? So I can get a couple chats here. Mervet, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, says, I felt seen and supported. I felt human. I want you to think about the power of these words, relief. They made me feel like my voice was heard, I wasn't alone, supported, and gave me more courage to speak up. The power of what you're putting into chat here is a testament to the power of allyship. Jeremy, thank you for this vulnerability. Unfortunately, the times when you needed it and where you needed it, you didn't get it. So thinking about with this question, when it needed to happen and didn't, and the impact, thank you for sharing that. Jacob, validated. Extremely grateful for someone who stood up for me. So from these comments, even in the lack of, when you needed an ally or an epic ally, the power of doing it well. But I think sometimes we treat these concepts in the DEI space like they're, like these magical secret behaviors. So what we've tried to do at inQuest is give some practical, pragmatic structures for how you might want to think about being an epic ally on a more consistent basis with more people more of the time. Because you're likely, get this, you are likely standing with and for people that you know today and your colleagues at work where you have a strong relationship, when you're comfortable with the topic or issues at hand. This isn't about not being able to do these things, because likely, and it's like I often say, we are all very inclusive of the people we're inclusive of. We're likely really strong allies for the people we're allies of. I want to challenge every one of us today, including myself. How do we expand the people and situations where we are allies for and with one another? So a couple of things. Let's talk about these concepts and putting them into action. I mentioned this book earlier, Subtle Acts of Exclusion. This is what we're drawing on in today's session. Our colleague, senior partner at inQuest, Dr. Michael Barron, and his incredible co-author, Dr. Tiffany Jana, released this book, How to Understand, Identify, and Stop Microaggressions, something that's long been in place in our workplaces and an area where we've made very little traction. So here's what we know. When these subtle acts of exclusion, or even overt acts of exclusion, happen, there often is an initiator, a person, someone who does or says the thing that is impacting someone or group. Then there's the subject, meaning the person who's impacted, the person or group who may be impacted by the words or actions of the initiator. But in our workplaces, there's also often observers in this process, or an opportunity for someone who's neither the initiator or the subject to be an ally, a person who has an opportunity to change the course of a situation to a more positive outcome. So that's that third role, if you will. So we're going to think about some of these. I'm going to give you actual scenarios that we've crafted from clients in the workplace, and we're going to talk through them and see, how we might apply the model that you see on the screen. So this is the model I referred to earlier that we actually use at inQuest ourselves, and that when a subtle act of exclusion has occurred, and let me draw a distinction here. Let me do a timeout. This model and the conversation that we're getting ready to have is truly for those subtle acts of exclusion. Those slights or opportunities in the workplace where something is done or said that doesn't necessarily cross the line of discrimination or harassing or hostile work environment. This is not those overt, blatant, purposeful, discriminatory or prejudiced behaviors. These are those subtle, nuanced behaviors that may be driven by bias, but the line is not so clear. Overt acts of exclusion, discrimination, disrespect, hostile work environment, we want to encourage you to use the channels you have in your workplace to escalate events like that. Your ethics line, your HR channels, your direct reporting channels. This does not take the place of that. These are for those moments where you're like, oh, I was in that meeting and it's like, was that quite right? Or boy, I wonder what she's thinking about what was just said, or if there was an impact. It's those head turn moments, those things that kind of make you go, wait a minute, did that really just happen? That's what we're talking about here. So the 4-step model, pause and be aware. One of the things that we know is when subtle acts of exclusion happen, it triggers often a physiological response. So sometimes if this has happened to me, something is done or said that I'm observing, and I know it triggers me, I know it's a subtle act of exclusion, I notice my heart rate increases, my hands may get a little sweaty, my heart rate may increase. Well, the pause and be aware, this is a very real physiological need. Take a breath and get oxygen to your brain. it may sound small and silly, but one of the best things we can do when we're in these kind of flashpoint moments is to breathe. Breathe. It helps increase our cognitive function and problem solving ability. So pause and be aware is an important step. And then often for many of us, and I'll say this as a 25-year DEI practitioner, when we see or hear something that's a subtle act of exclusion or an opportunity to be an epic ally to someone for a situation we're observing, often for many of us, it is, let me tell you why what you did was wrong. Well, we may be justified in that feeling, but it's not necessarily the way that most adults learn best. So we want to encourage leaning in together with this exploring together with curiosity step, meaning how do we both take a look, or how do I insert myself from a questioning and curious standpoint? So tell me more, what did you mean by that? Or can you help me understand why you would say or do that in the meeting yesterday? Understanding impact first is also really key, the third step. Too often, when people need an epic ally and others are the cause of that need, the initiator wants to talk about what their intentions were. Oh, I didn't intend to hurt Jeremy's feelings. I didn't intend to imply that. That wasn't my intention. Well, we divert the focus from the impact on the person who needs the allyship, and it focuses on the initiator. We actually want to reframe that and say, no, we really want to come back to, let's understand the impact that this had first. We'll get to intentions perhaps, but the impact is key. And then how can we use this all as an opportunity to grow? At inQuest, our view is, even within our own team, and these are seasoned DEI practitioners. If you work with any of us for very long, I guarantee you we will do or say something that crosses a line with another team member. In terms of this need for an epic allyship, not necessarily intentional at all. How do we, so it's not about eliminating these events, it's how do we create a culture where we can all grow from them and not repeat them. This is the 4-step model that we use frequently. I might encourage you, these work whether I'm an initiator, a subject, or an observer, or an ally of an SAE, subtle active exclusion is the shorthand. What we've done on this slide is give you, and feel free to take a screen grab of this particular slide, it may be helpful. This gives you some actual language of making these 4 steps come to life. So what might I say in the pause or be aware stage, or understanding the impact first step could be helpful for you here. I'm not going to cover or review these all. You can take a look at these on your own. And we call this calling in rather than calling out. How do I have an initiator be called into the discussion versus calling them out for their behavior? Key distinction for us in terms of creating a workplace culture that we feel is inclusive. So these are things that a subject or observer or an ally of an SAE can say or do. But also, if I'm an initiator of an SAE, subtle active exclusion, I can use these same 4 steps. So if I'm the one getting the feedback that I'm the one who has said or done something at work, I can use these 4 steps as I'm trying to process the information and the feedback I'm getting. So I'm allowing myself to be called in to getting the feedback about the SAE. So 4 steps, we're covering these really quickly, but we're going to try to put them to practice here and with looking at 3 quick scenarios that I'm going to walk you through on this being reactive and the importance of allyship. And we're going to read the scenario. We're going to get that into the room. We're going to talk quickly. So I'm going to ask that you just kind of come off mute. There's only 20 of us on the call. And we're going to talk quickly about what makes the scenario complicated. What would a goal or an outcome be? And then we're going to just do a quick little speed round skill practice on what we actually might do or say if we're an ally. And before I show you the first scenario, I want to share an observation because you are ERG leaders. Most of us in the ERG space are more comfortable being an ally when it's a dimension of our identity that we also share. So it makes sense. I've been more proximate to those issues. In this case, perhaps LGBTQIA+ workplace issues. So I'm more comfortable leaning in to being an epic ally for issues relating to gender identity and sexual orientation. Great. Here's what I would like to encourage you though. For ERG leaders, when we're able to be epic allies across other dimensions of identity or difference, it has a really significant impact on our workplace cultures. So for example, when I am and stand up for and with them, an epic ally for issues that one of my colleagues, female colleagues of color may be experiencing as an example, that has a different weight, if you will, that has a different way of supporting or being an epic ally. Not talking about being a savior, swooping in and saving, but how can I be an epic ally across lines of difference? Really, really key. So just a point there. So here we go. Scenario number one, you and Roderick, a colleague, are waiting for a supplier or partner meeting. Think about this as an external client, if you will. It's a meeting that's going to begin on Microsoft Teams. Chris, the supplier, the partner's lead on this project, isn't muted. You hear raised voices on his audio, and Chris says, when can we stop talking about racism? It's not helping anything, and as a white man, people are blaming me for something that happened 400 years ago. How much longer do I have to hear about it and be held accountable for it? Why can't they just move on? You observe Roderick, your colleague, who is Black, react on camera with a look of shock. So Chris is the initiator, Roderick is the subject, the primary subject, there may be others, and you have an opportunity, you're the ally, you're observing this. So let's just talk about what makes this complicated. Go off mute, give me some shout outs. What makes this complicated? Anyone?
You're not supposed to hear it. You are not supposed to hear it.
I wasn't supposed, it was a mistake. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Makes it complicated. Thank you. What else?
Internal and external conversations or audiences.
Yeah, it's not just inside our four walls. We've got an outside partner who just made this comment. Now what do I do? It could be a client or a partner, or a supplier. What else makes this hard? Or difficult or complicated?
I think if you're not supporting Roderick, you risk ostracizing him and making him feel unheard and victim of what was just said.
So it makes it complicated because there's risk if you do nothing, is what I'm hearing there. That makes it difficult, but what do you do? And can we be real? This is leaning into one of the most pressing issues of our day, and it's the topic of race and racism, which is for many of us not an easy conversation to have. So that we're clear on what makes it complicated. Who needs an ally here in this scenario?
Roderick.
Roderick is the primary ally, but I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Might Chris also need an ally?
No.
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 So might Chris need somebody to redirect his thinking, somebody to stand for and with him to understand the impact of his words and actions in the workplace that could be a career derailer for him? I share that with you. I know that's not the go-to, and I don't want to take the attention off the need to be a primary ally to Roderick first. I want to be really, really clear there. But even our mindset of how we get ready or think about approaching, addressing the situation, that small shift with Chris may make a difference. May make a difference. And
So-
our other team members on the call, we don't know who may else have heard this comment. There could be other folks that we need to be allies for who overheard this comment. What are our goals here? What would success look like? What would a desired outcome be?
Well, hopefully we make Chris understand that what he said was not okay and, that he should do some research and work on changing his mind.
Yeah, and understand your impact and that this was an inappropriate, certainly I would say this is not so subtle in this case, way to be having a public conversation on a client meeting.
Hopefully Roderick would walk away from the situation feeling supported based on our actions.
Yes, feeling supported and heard and seen. Have you ever experienced situations like this, though, at work where you've observed them yourself and perhaps no one said anything?
Yes.
The impact of that can sometimes be worse by not having our colleagues stand for and with us. If we were Roderick, than the initiator thing that was said or done. So they can be compounding slights. So what might you do or say? You're on this call. Anyone want to be brave and step into an Epic Ally trial here? What might you do in the moment? Let's talk about that. So in the moment.
So to be honest with you, what I would do, which I know is not enough, but that's what I would do, and probably a lot of people would do, is to reach out to Roderick privately and ask him, are you okay? Is there anything I could do? That's what we tend to do. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but that's in reality how we do it, how most people do it. Do it in private, one-on-one.
So check in with Roderick one-on-one, and I want to honor and applaud and appreciate that. That is a form of allyship, that is taking action, and it does send the signal to Roderick that you have heard and seen this. You're not ignoring it. So that's one option. What else?
So I would add to that. I would firstly say, hey, Chris, you're not on mute, to have him stop spewing whatever he has already shared so he doesn't keep going.
Yep.
So, first I would start there. Hey, Chris, you're not on mute. Just, you might want to check. And then I would, what Shadi said, I would privately message Roderick in the moment to say, hey, I got you. Happy to talk to you later. That sucks. Just to really say, hey, I heard it too. I'm with you. Let's talk about it later. Because if this is a supplier's lead, you might not want to bring that up in the moment and start to have this conversation, but certainly take it back and have a broader conversation after, whatever this meeting, after this concludes. So those are my thoughts.
Great, thank you. So addressing it verbally, and one of the things that I'm going to build on that using the model could be, Chris, yeah, stop. You're not on mute, and we can hear you. And I'm not even quite sure of the impact that us overhearing your comments unintentionally have for everybody on this call. But I just need to stop. I mean, I may go as far as saying, I'm so uncomfortable at this moment. I'm going to request that we reschedule. We step away and reschedule this discussion for another time. So I want to just throw that out to you. If you're in that position with the client, that can be an option. Wait, time out, pause and be aware. Could be, I'm stopping this whole thing right now. Now, that may not be an option in all cases, but I want to make sure that you see it as a potential in some cases. But this notion of pause and be aware, and Chris, I think this could have such an impact on some of the folks who have observed or heard these comments. I'd like to request a follow-up, or I'm going to request that there's a follow-up with you on my company's behalf. And so with that, let's move on and get to the business that we need to cover. But you've sent the signal that something will happen after the meeting. So those are some additional, you've got to do these in ways and address these in ways that are authentic for you and your leadership and personality approach. Absolutely. You have to be aware of the political implications. And I don't mean politics, but I mean the dynamics of the relationships and the circumstance. And I would still suggest you have to act. You have to act. I'm going to move us to the next one here. Let's get another one just to see the variety of these. So Carlos and Brian are both top performers on the team that you're on. And during an open forum, it's typical in your team meetings, Brian shared that his sister's oldest child is transgender and has asked the family to start using a new name and pronouns at family functions. Brian expressed how he was trying to be supportive, but also how concerned he was about not getting their name and pronouns right every time. No other discussion occurred. In today's team meeting, during a similar open forum and check-in, Carlos says, I think we need to stop the personal sharing elements of our team meetings. It doesn't have anything to do with work. I think it's a distraction and risks us finding out things about our team members that we don't agree with. Carlos looks right at Brian and says, like last week, for example. Let's bounce for time. What might you do or say if you're a colleague to Carlos and Brian? To be an epic ally, what might you do or say in this moment?
What about just saying like, oh, I thought Brian's story was great. I think that these, I think that these meetings are really helpful, and it's actually really nice to hear people's personal stories.
Okay, excellent. So you're coming to saying, wait a minute, I want to make sure that the position that I'm taking is that Brian's sharing felt appropriate to me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. What else? What other ideas or options might we engage in?
I would lean on my company's core values, like respect for people. And so even if there's something that you don't personally agree with, you still have to demonstrate respect for your colleagues, and that we strive for an environment where all staff can bring their full selves to work.
And that includes whole selves being maybe similar situations that Brian just shared with us.
Exactly.
So drawing on and reinforcing our company values. Thank you. Great option. Other ideas? Think about the model. Pause and be aware. Explore together with curiosity. Understand impact first, and use the opportunity to grow. Any thoughts? Does that bring up any thoughts for anyone?
Well, one thought from an impact perspective that comes to mind, that be aware of your sphere of influence and your position. For example, if I am the manager of this team, so whatever I do or not do is going to have impact far beyond this particular incident, because others will be watching. So I need to be careful not to position myself as a mitigator or just investigator, as if I'm neutral and looking into some conflict. This is bigger than that. This is about, my company as a culture, my team as a unit. So I would take if I am really in a leadership role, I would take a much stronger position to emphasize, that the inclusive culture, and the need for inclusiveness, and part of the inclusiveness is bringing your own self to work, and sharing about your personal story. So I would really use this incident to hammer those themes, so that I could mitigate or eliminate impacts to others. Mm-hmm. Now back to Brian. Brian obviously is impacted, so that it need to be dealt, based on Brian, if I know him and I know what's the best way to mitigate that impact.
Great insight. So context and where you are in the hierarchy matters, and what your role is in this particular meeting may influence the actions that you take. One of the most common, we did this scenario with an exec team. And in this case, I'll share with you, the CEO said, well, I would do nothing in the moment. I would try to move on from the conversation, and I would have a one-on-one with Carlos afterwards. I've been taught, this is what the CEO said, I've been taught in my career, praise or acknowledge in public, criticize and correct in private. So this is a correction moment to me for Carlos, and I would do that one-on-one. And I hope you, while this was one individual, I hope you realize that that may be a view shared by many, right? But what we believe that happens in that case is it creates passive acceptance, right? So this is like the TSA adage, if you see something, say something. Passive acceptance is unacceptable when these things occur. And what the CEO, the conversation we had with the CEO who brought this up was, oh, you're placing Carlos's emotional safety in the moment as a higher priority than Brian's or any of the other team members who observed this. And he's like, wait, no, that's not what I'm doing. I was like, really? Think about it. You're placing the protection of Carlos at a higher level and priority than Brian and the others. So it was a great dialogue and something I think for us to think about. And it was an aha moment for this particular leadership team. So I share these two scenarios with you, not that we're going to solve them, not that there's easy answers, but we believe that when we practice thinking about scenarios like this in advance, it helps us be more prepared when they actually happen or similar things happen in the workplace, to apply the 4 steps of pause and be aware. So assess the situation, breathe. How do I explore together with curiosity? Carlos, you may not have meant to shut Brian down, but I'm concerned that that would be the impact of this. And let's talk about the firm values that we have here. I'm curious how we navigate this together. We want to honor your perspective, but we certainly also want to honor Brian's and what he brought to the table at the last meeting. How do we navigate this together versus let me tell you why you're wrong? Food for thought. All right. So I want to be mindful of time. I'm going to skip here the proactive framework because epic allyship is 2 things. It's not only the reactive when something is said or done, it's being proactive as well. One of the things that I would encourage you is this is a model we also use at inQuest to help us be more proactive in standing for and with others who may need or not feel as seen or be as seen and heard in our organizations. How are we inviting ourselves and them into conversations about these topics? Even something as simple as, I'm curious, how can I best support you? I'm a colleague. I want to make sure everybody's successful. I want to make sure everyone feels as included as possible. Is there anything I can do to help you feel more welcome, valued, respected, and heard? That's an invitation question. And then once you're there and you hear, how do you connect human to human, knowing that some of these conversations aren't always easy and they're uncomfortable? How do you listen using an underdeveloped skill in the workplace for many of us, and that's empathy? How do we consider our positions of privilege? And how do we best use all 3 of those to take actions that acknowledge, support, promote, sponsor in ways that build bridges versus create walls and tear relationships down? So this is a quick overview of this model of the proactive ways to becoming an epic ally in absence of a reactive event. So I know we've covered a lot of ground. I'm going to skip these slides here. We bounce to these. Want to bounce here to just kind of final remarks here. Think about, out of that model, invite, connect, consider, act, or even pause, the previous model, pause, be aware, explore together with curiosity, understand impact first, and create an opportunity to grow. Which of these do you do well, consistently, and with everyone? Which are harder for you? And when are the circumstances more difficult for you to step up and be an epic ally to others? Who might benefit? Thinking consciously and deliberately in your sphere today in your workplace. Is there anyone that you can think of that might benefit from having you as an EPIC ally? And if so, what steps can you take to trying in the next couple of weeks to better step into the role of being an EPIC ally for and with our colleagues? So just some thought starters for you as we are at our time. What I'd love is in chat. I know we've covered a lot of material quickly. Just a word or a short phrase, the value of this discussion and thinking about skill practicing in becoming an EPIC ally. Any takeaways, ahas, anything regarding the value of this very short, brief time that we had together, ending this ERG chat today. EPIC, thank you. Jeremy. Comes up for you, the value of this notion of being an EPIC ally. Understanding the impact. Yeah, these conversations go wrong often really quickly because the initiator wants to explain their intent. One of the things that I often do is say, thank you for sharing. I want to get to that, but I really think it's important for us to understand the impact first. It's not to dismiss the intention, because sometimes we need to hear that from others, but it's not the first thing I want to hear. Yeah, I want to practice with scenarios like these. Thinking about what you would do and helping colleagues in safe places practice is a great way to get better at being an EPIC ally, because these are sticky, messy, uncomfortable circumstances. So you can be ready when it happens. Thank you, Amy, for that. Yeah, Leslie, thank you for this. The different roles. And even when often I may be, although I don't even know that this is so true, but something happens walking down Michigan Avenue that I choose not to respond to, or I overhear and I choose not to be an EPIC ally is one thing. Choosing not to when I hear it in my workplace is a whole nother thing altogether. And so this notion of when do I be brave and stand up as a driver of my culture? Thank you, Leslie, for that as well. All right, any questions, comments, reactions for me? Questions before as we kind of wrap it up here? Questions, comments, concerns that any of you have? Feel free to jump off mute.
So I do have a question. So, in real life, these are very, as you said, complex situation, and often, roles are not clear cut. So the subject might become an initiator or vice versa. And there will be heightened emotion in some cases. And even as an ally, we're with people, and sometimes we get emotional. So what are your tips to, I think to do an effective allyship, you need to have your emotion at check. I believe in that. If you want to follow a model, or so, what are your tips to keep your to basically mitigate your emotional state of mind, so you don't really step from being an ally to being either a subject or even an initiator?
Yeah. So in the larger program, one of the things we spend a fair amount of time on is readying yourself to be an ally. So this notion of, and it's under the pause and be aware. And again, I'm going to use an airplane analogy. I've got to put my oxygen mask on first before I can help others. And it's very true here as well in EPIC allyship. What we coach folks to do is, if you do not feel equipped and capable, your reaction is so strong in the moment, that pause and be aware may mean sending that signal. I am to the point now where I'm triggered by what was just said or done, to the point where I can't continue a conversation about it, but I wanted to acknowledge that I'm aware of it and I want to come back to it, but right now is not the time for me, but I do think we need to address it. Even so, that notion of putting a pin in it and buying time, you do a couple of things. You send the signal that this wasn't falling on deaf ears to you, right? You saw and heard it, and that you're honoring yourself and your own reaction. You're giving yourself permission that I can't, and I'm not equipped in this moment to address it in a way that could be honoring. And we encourage to be transparent and say that. Stepping away sometimes and taking that breath and regrouping, maybe it's even talking to a peer or a colleague first, is a great way, So thank you for the question. And it's a very real one. You've got to be ready. And even with that, you're likely never going to be completely comfortable. So that's the fine line you walk. Great question. Anything else? Anything else? All right, then with that, Jeremy, I'll turn it back to you. I think we may have gone just a little bit over. My apologies about that, but hopefully you'll give me a little grace and don't think of it as a subtle act of exclusion with your calendar.
No worries at all, Scott. You actually finished right on time. We had 2 more minutes, and so you are doing well. But thank you so much, Scott. This really was a really enlightening conversation. Again, that part for me about really taking the time to have people think about what the impact was before thinking about the intent, because you are very right that so often in those situations when someone didn't mean to say something and someone's offended, the person automatically wants to go into sort of defense mode and trying to explain it. And in those moments, you as the person who was affected by it, now you're in a situation trying to make this person feel better about how they made you feel bad. And so I definitely appreciated that, and it's something that I'm sure I'll have to use down the road.
I have been direct in saying, Jeremy, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your intention. This is not about you in this moment. I need you to understand what I'm going to ask that you do your best to try to is to understand the impact on the other individual or on me first. I'll come back to your intention. I'll get there, but I want us to really focus on impact first. And so sometimes just giving people, like redirecting them, because that defensive nature or that defensive posturing is a reaction that we can help manage.
This also sounds like a good life therapy, friendship, relationship lesson. Just think about it. This is going to be my thought for the day, for the week probably. So thank you, Scott.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. So again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Huge shout out to Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, as well as inQuest Consulting for being great partners and sponsors for today's content. As you all saw, Scott had his email up on the last slide. I'll also be sharing in the follow-up, I'll connect everyone to Scott's LinkedIn page, and you can feel free to connect with him there and reach out to him so that he can be a partner in navigating your company's diversity and inclusion efforts. As I said earlier, don't forget to join us on December 7th for our 25th anniversary gala. We're planning for it to be a phenomenal, awesome event, and we hope that all of you will join us. I'll be sending out sponsorship information too, so I hope that all of you will be agreeing to sponsor our event. We won't fight you. We won't fight you for signing up for it. We want it. But this has been an incredible day, awesome learning, great networking, great training. And we look forward to being a partner to all of you as you continue to work on your Supplier diversity programs, or to continue to find ways to better engage and support your LGBTQ and ally employees. And so thanks to all the speakers who were here with us today. Thanks to all of you who joined us throughout the day. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon as we continue through this great work. Scott, thank you again. And everyone, we look forward to seeing you soon. And I hope that you have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Go off mute. Say goodbye so we hear your voices.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
It's been a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. All right. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.